Kona entered the living room and headed straight for the front door. She was meeting up with Shio again, and this time she didn't want to be late. Kona, dear, where are you going? Kona turned around and saw her grandma behind the counter to the kitchen, looking at her with a somewhat concerned look. I'm just going to hang out with a friend. Again? You've been doing that a lot lately. She's a new friend and I really like her. She's really nice and we have a lot of fun together, so we've been spending a lot of time together. You've never had a friend like this before, Kona. You never even went out this much with Corinne. Well, that's because she was always busy. Kona, I just worry about you. You're my precious granddaughter, and I would feel so guilty if anything happened to you. Her grandmother swam over to her and gently wrapped her arms around her. Kona hugged her grandmother back to try and reassure her. I promise I'm being careful, Nan. This friend is truly very nice, and I always enjoy my time with her. I trust that she won't hurt me, and you know I'm always careful whenever I leave the house. I do, but that won't stop me from worrying. Kona giggled. I don't doubt that. Her grandmother rubbed her head and kissed it gently. Come home safe, Kona. Okay, I'll see you later, Nan. Kona left the house and embarked on her usual path out of the city with a somewhat sour look on her face. She eventually let Delphi out of the ocean book, and the fairy began to swim alongside her cheerfully. I wonder what she was going to show us today, Feet, she said. Yeah, I wonder. Are you okay, Kona Feet? You don't seem to be as cheerful as usual at the moment, Feet. It's nothing that important, but I'm starting to feel bad about lying to my grandparents. Lying, Feet? Yeah. Every time I leave to go do something with Shio on land, I always have to lie about where I'm going to my grandparents. I can only ever say, oh, I'm going to see a friend. I can never tell them where exactly I'm going, and I feel bad about that. But you aren't exactly lying to them, Feet. Shio is a friend, so you telling them you're going to see a friend isn't a lie, Feet. Yeah, but I never tell them that I'm traveling to the human world, that I'm going on land. It feels like I'm lying by omission, Kona explained. I just want to tell them that I'm a precure. I want to tell them that I have these special powers that give me the ability to transform into a human and go on land so they know where I am. They don't always know where I am, and when they don't, they worry. I don't want them to worry. I'm sorry you're feeling like this, Kona Feet, but you absolutely have to keep your identity a secret, Feet. We cannot risk anyone finding out because the information could spread around and could easily jeopardize the mission, Feet. I know, it just saddens me. Kona sighed. It truly was the only thing she disliked about being a precure thus far. Having to keep her identity a secret from people she cared about and trusted so deeply was one of the most difficult things she'd ever had to do because it truly did feel like she was lying. She knew she wasn't, and it was overall safer to keep her identity a secret, but it still made her feel awful. She also knew that her grandparents were trustworthy and wouldn't tell her secret to others. But if Delphi said she needed to keep her identity a secret, then she had to go along with that. Don't worry too much, Kona Feet. As soon as we complete the mission, then you can tell them all you want, Feet. What a comforting thought that was. Kona and Delphi reached the cove where they had first met Shio. Delphi re-entered her place in the ocean book, and Kona placed it inside her satchel before pulling out her heart shell. Human form! Kona touched the gem on her heart shell, and her body was quickly enveloped in a bright pink light. Once it had disappeared, her tail was gone, and she was left with a pair of legs. Kona stood up and walked onto the beach. She lifted her arms above her head and stretched out her joints to free them of any stiffness. A content sigh left her mouth, and she slipped her heart shell back into her bag. Now, let's get going so we can get to Shio's place. She might be waiting for us already. Wait, Kona Feet! Don't forget to change your clothes, Feet! Kona's satchel opened and out popped the change of clothes Shio had lent her when she had first visited. Because she wouldn't be able to take them home with her as is, they would inevitably get soaked. Delphi suggested that she keep them within the ocean book. That way she would have easy access to them every time she ventured onto land, and so they'd remain dry. Oh yeah, Kona responded. She took off her satchel, set it on the ground, then quickly ducked behind one of the rocks to change. When finished, she again picked up her satchel and began to make her way up to the sidewalk. You still seem a bit upset, Kona Feet, Delphi noted. Are you really that upset about not being able to tell your grandparents about your identity feat? Kona sighed. Honestly, yeah. I've known them my entire life, and they have repeatedly shown me how trustworthy they are. I trust them with everything, and they trust me. Not being able to tell them this one thing just sucks and makes me feel bad, Kona explained. I know you don't know them, but when I say they're trustworthy, I mean it. They've never done anything to break my trust. Kona, I understand. I really do, Feet. But I can't allow you to say anything, Feet. It could be for your own good, Feet. Even that one human girl accidentally seeing you and Shio transformed could potentially be too big a risk, Feet. I know. Kona reached the sidewalk. She looked both ways as she searched through her mind to remember the way to Shio's house. The last time they had met up, Shio had shown her how to get back to her house from the cove, but Kona realized that she now didn't remember which way she needed to go. Kona Feet? I don't remember where I'm supposed to go, Delphi. What? Didn't Shio show you exactly where to go, Feet? She did, but she's used to the area and knows where she's going. I don't. Kona, you need to be more attentive. Hey, Sayo-san! Delphi immediately stopped talking, and Kona turned towards the voice who was calling to her. To her surprise, she saw Takumi walking up the sidewalk in her direction. Ah, Kaito-kun, she said. It's good to see you again, Takumi said with a smile. Yeah, you too. What are you doing today? I know you're not enrolled in a school yet, so what have you been up to? Well, I went for an outing and was going to meet up with Shio at her house when I was done, but I don't remember which way to go, she explained nervously. Hey, I can show you the way if you'd like. I've been there a few times to work on school projects and whatnot, so I could help you out. Really? Oh, thank you so much. I thought I was just going to be walking around like a lost puppy for hours, she laughed. Hey, don't worry about it. I'm here to help. The two began walking up the hill in the direction of Shio's house. You know, you've asked me what I've done today, but you haven't told me what you've done, Kona said. Well, I got to take the day off of school because I had a doctor's appointment. It was a more in-depth one, so my parents decided to take me out for the whole day instead of having me go back for maybe not even an hour. Ah, lucky. I almost never got to miss school back home, Kona said with a slight pout. Takumi laughed. Guess you were always a healthy kid then. Yeah, I very rarely got sick. That and my grandparents wanted to teach me to be resilient and persevere through minor inconveniences, so they always made sure I went to school unless I was seriously ill. That only happened maybe once or twice. You were raised by your grandparents? Takumi asked. Yeah. I'm not quite sure what happened to my parents, but I definitely plan to look for them one day. Hey, if you need any help, you're welcome to talk to me. I might be able to help you do some research. Thank you for the offer, Kaito-kun, but I don't know if you'd be able to help find anything. I come from a very different place with very different people. It would probably be very hard for you. Maybe so, but I do enjoy a good challenge, and I like to help my friends out. Kona's face reddened slightly. This boy barely knew her and had no reason to trust or be friendly to her, and yet he was. He was treating her as if they were close friends. He wasn't treating her like a stranger. She'd met plenty of people in her life who were kind, open, and friendly, but somehow this boy was managing to surpass all of them and her expectations. She hadn't really met anyone like him in her entire life. Well, thank you, Kaito-kun. I really appreciate it. Hey, don't worry about it, Sayo-san. The two exchanged smiles and continued walking to Shio's house. Seish sat on the far side of the room by a window while she thought over her failure from a few days prior. She clenched her fist and grit her teeth in anger. Shit, I can't believe I failed, she muttered to herself. I can't believe you failed either. You know, with how confident you seem to be with your new and amazing plan. Seish looked behind her and saw Ooze leaning against the wall a few feet away with a sarcastic sneer on her face. Seish rolled her eyes and looked out the window. She knew giving in to Ooze's taunting would only make it worse, so she knew not to poke the proverbial bear. Aw, is someone too upset to respond? Are you afraid to admit that you're not as good as you think you are? Ooze frowned and turned away. Man, you're such a party pooper, she whined. Just you wait till you go out and fight those Precure. Maybe you'll see for yourself how hard it is to fight them, and then maybe you'll shut your trap, Locke spat. Now you shut your face, Locke! There is no way they're as troublesome as you make them out to be. You two just suck at your job. Well, I would sure as hell like to see you fucking fight them then. Ooze grit her teeth, quickly swam over to Locke, and got right up in her face. You just don't want to admit that I'm better than you. You can't be better than me if you haven't even done anything to begin with. Ooze growled and pulled her arm back to prepare a punch. You son of a... Both of you stop it. Right now. Ooze's fist stopped just a few short centimeters from Locke's face. Both of them turned to the source of the stern voice and saw Scarp entering the room. Locke clicked her tongue and then sneered at Ooze. Guess you'll have to beat me up some other time, she muttered under her breath. You bet your ass I will, Ooze muttered back. Ooze grit her teeth and then pushed Locke away. Sage swam over and all three assumed their position of respect. Scarp shook her head in response to Locke and Ooze before she turned her attention to Sage. Sage, I'd like a report of your experiment with corrupting humans' confidence power. Yes, Scarp-sama, Sage said. I was unsuccessful in the mission of capturing the Sea Fairy or taking the Prince's medallion. As expected, Ooze muttered. Sage shot her a glare before continuing. However, I was able to use the newly made anxiety power to create a powerful monster, a Kirai Mizu. It wasn't as strong as it could have been, but it still gave the Precures a difficult time, Sage explained. If it weren't for the interference of another human, they would have been wiped out. Interference from another human? Scarp asked. Yes. This human seemed to be friends with the Precure and distracted the Kirai Mizu long enough for the others to take it down. I apologize for my lapse in attention, Scarp-sama. It's okay, Sage. You still developed a strong strategy that we can use against the Precure, Scarp responded. Ooze. Yes? Ooze asked. Are you able to use Sage's method and create a Kirai Mizu to fight the Precure? Ooze's eyes widened. She hadn't expected for Scarp to ask her this, but maybe this was her chance. Maybe she could finally prove herself to Scarp and prove that she was, in fact, better than Locke. Yes, I can and will create a Kirai Mizu stronger than the Precure, and I will take the Prince's medallion. I trust that you will. Now go. I expect results. Yes, Scarp-sama. Ooze swam out of the cavern. She, of course, didn't leave without giving Locke an arrogant smirk. Here we are. Kona looked at the building they had stopped in front of, and her eyes widened. As they had walked, she and Takumi had passed tons of houses that were all roughly the same size, but this house was nothing like any of them. This house, by comparison, was huge. It had a lot more space between it and the others in the neighborhood, which were equally as large. Each had a decent-sized yard, and Shio specifically was littered with many different kinds of trees and flowers. It was nothing like Kona had ever seen on land or in Coral Reef City. Whoa, her house is huge, Kona exclaimed. Yeah, even I'm surprised every time I come by, Takumi agreed. How does she afford a place like this? Her parents have very well-paying jobs. What they are, I'm not sure, but they make a ton of money. Whoa. I don't know a lot about her family because we're not terribly close, but I do know that her parents are away on business trips for a good chunk of the year. So is she alone at home most of the time? I mean, she does have Kishi-san over somewhat frequently, and I'll come over every now and again when we need to work on stuff for the student council, but for the most part I don't think she often has company. That's kind of sad. Yeah, I've always felt for her with that, Takumi said. But hey, you're potentially going to be homestaying with her, right? That means she'll now have someone there with her and she won't be as lonely. Kona's eyes brightened and she smiled when she heard Takumi's comment. You're right, she nearly cheered. I'll do my best to keep her company. I don't doubt that you will, Takumi said with a smile. Oi! Kaito-kun! Takumi and Kona looked down the hill and saw both Shio and Hikaru making their way up. Takumi waved to them, his smile still bright on his face. What are you doing here, Kaito-kun? Shio asked when they reached the top of the hill. Yeah, and why did you get to skip out on school for the day? Hikaru asked with a sarcastic glare. I had a doctor's appointment. It's nothing special, he briefly explained. And I'm here because I was helping Kona get to your house. Shio looked at Kona. You didn't remember the directions? Kona shook her head with a sheepish grin. I was lucky that Kaito-kun showed up because I would have gotten super lost if he didn't. Hey, I'm always here to help, Takumi responded. Thank you, Kona said. Takumi flashed her another smile before he turned to leave. I'll see you guys later, he said with a wave as he began to walk back down the hill. He really is quite the friendly guy, isn't he? Kona asked. Sometimes I think his willingness to help people is concerning, Hikaru said. I swear, that kid doesn't take any time to enjoy himself or his own hobbies. Come on, Hikaru, I don't think it's that serious, Shio responded. Well, I know that, but you can't say that not taking time to indulge in your own interests is good for your mental health. I mean, you're right, but we don't know what he does in his free time. Maybe he does indulge in his hobbies. Yeah, maybe you're right. Well, I think we need to keep an eye on him, Fee, Delphi piped up suddenly from the ocean book. Huh? Where's that voice coming from? Hikaru asked. Kono's satchel opened and Delphi flew out of it. Hikaru's eyes widened slightly. You're the flying dolphin creature! Delphi, right? She asked. Yes, it's nice to meet you again, Fee. Likewise, Hikaru said with a smile. So what's up with Kaito-kun? Why do you want to watch him? Kona asked. I'm not actually completely sure, Fee, but when you girls defeated the Kiraimizu the other day, I saw him leaving the park, Fee. Kaito-kun was still in the park? Shio asked. I thought he had left. That's not the point, Fee. This was the first time I fully laid eyes upon him, and when I did, a very odd feeling appeared in my gut, Fee. I don't know what it was, but it made me feel very uneasy, Fee. Do you think he's working for the Sirens or something? I don't know, Fee. All I want to do for now is keep an eye on him, Fee. Kona looked at Delphi hesitantly. What was so concerning or off-putting about Takumi? He had shown her nothing but kindness and didn't give off any sort of negative or untrustworthy vibes. It just didn't make sense. That combined with the fact that Delphi was so vehemently against Kona telling her grandparents about her identity was really starting to affect her opinion of the fairy. You guys do realize I have no idea what you're talking about, right? The three looked back at Hikaru, who was looking at them with a smile that expressed that she was quite confused. Shio laughed slightly. Sorry, Hikaru. Why don't we go inside so we can talk everything over? Sounds good. All four of them entered Shio's house. They left their shoes in the entranceway and then made their way into the living room. Whoa, it's even better on the inside, Kona exclaimed. I don't even think the richest people in my city have the houses this big. Well, it definitely benefits you to have a rich friend then, Hikaru said while putting her hand briefly on Kona's shoulder and walking to the dining table. Did you guys want anything to drink? I can make some tea or whatever else, Shio offered. Oh, tea please, Hikaru said. Shio makes the best tea. You should try some, Sayo-san. Well, I don't want to force you to make anything, Shio, Kona said. It's okay, Kona. I'm offering. After all, you're a guest, and I want to make you feel at home, Shio responded with a warm smile. Kona gave a soft smile in return. Then I guess I'll have tea too. Thank you, Shio. Shio nodded and then went into the kitchen to make the tea. Hikaru sat down at the dining table and Kona followed suit. Delphi still hung about in the air near Kona's shoulder, as she didn't want to sit down just yet. So how did you meet Shio? Hikaru asked Kona. Huh? Oh, well, it's kind of a long story, actually, Kona said. Oh, come on, it can't be that long. Well, it involves the same event and the reason why we're here to talk to you, Fee, Delphi said. Event? You mean that situation in the park? Yes, Fee. Goodness, I didn't think things could be so complicated, Hikaru said with a nervous laugh. After a few more minutes of idle chit-chat mixed with awkward silence, Shio exited the kitchen with 3 cups of tea. She set them down on the table and then sat down next to Kona. I made it just the way you like it, Hikaru, Shio said. Whoo, thanks, Shio! You're welcome, Shio responded and took a sip from her cup. Now to do what we came here to do. Yes, Fee, Delphi said. We are here to explain to you what you witnessed the other day and what we need you to do to help us from here on out, Fee. What I need to do? Hikaru asked, her tone laced with slight annoyance. It isn't as bad as it sounds. Please let us explain, Fee. Hikaru nodded and brought her cup to her lips. Go ahead, she said before taking a sip. Well, where should we even begin? Kona asked. Well, I guess what I would start with. Hikaru, do you have any specific questions? Shio said. Well, I definitely have a lot, but I guess the first one I want to know is, well, what are you guys? What are the Precure? She asked. The Precure are people who hold great mystical powers that allow them to fight against evil Fee, Delphi briefly explained. That sounds like the most generic superhero story plot I have ever heard in my life, Hikaru said sarcastically. I am telling the truth, Fee, Delphi defended. Can you not give more detail? Delphi pouted. She really did not want to reveal more information than necessary to an outsider, but what choice did she have in this instance? Hikaru had seen Kona and Shio transform. There was no way to dance around the subject. She knew too much already. Delphi thought she might as well go ahead and tell Hikaru everything. Well, mostly everything. The Precure were people who had access to great power Fee. They could transform and fight evil like I mentioned previously, but they also were given the purpose of protecting the people on Earth and in the Ocean Kingdom Fee, Delphi explained. I wish I could give you more detail, but that is unfortunately all I know about the Precure themselves, Fee. Their existence and origin is wrapped in mystery, Fee. So then how did Sayo-san and Shio become them? Hikaru asked. All I know is that somehow they connected with the heart shells and that transformed them, Fee. The heart shells? Kona and Shio both pulled out their heart shells and put them on the table. Delphi quickly entered the ocean book and returned with the two others in Finn. These are the heart shells, Fee. They are the devices that the Precure used to transform Fee. Hikaru picked one up and carefully began to observe it. She turned it over and over, observing every little detail she could find on the mostly smooth surface. Delphi grimaced at the action, but didn't say anything. If these items hold such great power, how did you get your hands on them? The heart shells have been in the possession of the Ocean Kingdom for many generations, Fee. I gained possession of them when the prince left them with me, Fee. Hikaru set the heart shell down. What exactly is the Ocean Kingdom? Delphi's attitude shifted and she seemed saddened. Hikaru noticed and raised her eyebrow ever so slightly. The Ocean Kingdom was my home, Fee, she said quietly. But it was attacked and it was destroyed, Fee. Oh. Hikaru didn't know what to say. She hadn't been expecting an answer like that. The Ocean Kingdom was a place of both land and sea, Fee. Mermaids and sea fairies lived amongst each other peacefully, Fee. There was rarely any conflict, and if any did arise, the prince was swift in making sure that it was taken care of, Fee. Delphi continued. I'm looking for the Precure because they are the only ones who have the power that can restore the kingdom, Fee. They are also the only ones who have the power necessary to defeat the sirens and protect your world as well, Fee. Our world? What do they want with our world? Hikaru asked, this time with fear lacing her tone. I don't think they want anything specifically from this world, or at least I'm unsure if they do, Fee. But I know that they followed me here and want to steal the prince's medallion, Fee. They seem to also be after me myself, Fee. Maybe that's because you're the only remaining citizen from the Ocean Kingdom, Shio suggested. You're realistically the only fault left in their plan. Well, there's that, but also us, Kona added. Maybe they want to capture you so you can't find any more Precure. Okay, let me get things straight here, Hikaru interjected. So there's this whole ass other world, separate from our own, that was attacked and destroyed by someone, and you're trying to find people who have enough power to restore this other world, while simultaneously protecting this one? Yes, Fee. And Kona and Shio are these people. Well, it's not so much that they are the Precure, it's more that they were chosen to be, Fee. Chosen? Again, I'm not entirely sure, but from what I've observed, they both had moments where they proved that they would do anything to fight for the well-being of others, and that strong energy connected with the heart shells, Fee. That granted them the ability to become Precures, Fee. Well, how exactly did it happen for you guys? I can't say I fully remember, Kona started. I was only going to explore a shipwreck, and while I was there, I discovered Delphi and everything about the Precure. We were then attacked by one of the sirens, and I guess I found enough courage within myself to stand up to her. It was likely that courage mixed with your strong will to protect the ones you love, Fee, Delphi added. For me, I met Kona, and she, as well as Delphi, explained to me what the Precure were, albeit vaguely since they had literally just met me in that moment, Shio then explained. We were then attacked, and Kona fought to protect me. When she was unable to, I guess my courage resonated with the heart shell, and that's how I transformed. That's right, Fee. Both of them showed courage and a strong will to protect someone, and that courage created what they needed to transform Fee. So hypothetically, if I were to do the same, would I also be able to transform and become a Precure? Hikaru asked. It's very possible, but I don't know if it's as simple as it sounds, Fee. I don't know if you can just do it, or if it is something that happens in the moment, Fee. Hikaru frowned. That seems so complicated. Are you sure this isn't some really elaborate trick? Am I just dreaming or something? No, it's 100% true, Shio said. I mean, you saw us, didn't you, Hikaru? You watched us transform and fight a monster right in front of your eyes. I know that, but this is the sort of thing that you only hear about in fiction. Not many people would believe anyone telling them this. I guess you're right. Well, enough about that, I guess, Hikaru said with a sigh. You said you guys also needed something from me to help you out. Ah, I almost forgot, Fee, Delphi almost shouted. Since you are not a Precure, what we need from you is to help keep the existence of them and their mission a secret, Fee. You were never meant to find out. No one was, Fee. But now that you do, we need you to keep things a secret, Fee. Hikaru crossed her arms, closed her eyes, and leaned back as a quiet hum left her mouth. This was a lot to hear from her friends and a sentient dolphin. Sure, she had loose ambitions of being a superhero and fighting evil when she was young, but she had given up on that a long time ago. She knew that magic and superhumans didn't exist. It was physically impossible. Yet here she was being told by her friend and that damn sentient dolphin that people with mystical powers did indeed exist. So what do you say, Hikaru? Will you please help us out by keeping all of this a secret? Shio asked. You know, I could make an assload of money by selling this information to the media, Hikaru muttered. Shio, Kona, and Delphi's faces all went pale. Kona gulped while Shio smiled nervously. Hikaru, you wouldn't really do that, would you? Hikaru leaned forward again with her signature cheeky smile. Of course not, she reassured. Shio, you're my best friend. I'm not going to do anything that would put you in danger. The three of them sighed in relief, with Shio specifically adding a headshake to the mix. Oh, Hikaru, always and forever the one for jokes. You know it, Shio. Well, it's good to know we have an ally, Kona said. Thank you for agreeing to help, Kishi-san. Don't mention it, Hikaru responded. Oh, and don't feel the need to be so formal around me. You can just call me Hikaru. Then you can just call me Kona, she said with a smile. Delphi watched the three of them and also smiled. Suddenly, a somewhat shrill alarm began to go off in the room. Shio and Kona immediately looked down at and then picked up their heart shells as the alarm was very clearly coming from them. What's this? Kona asked. Oh no, this must be a signal that the sirens are attacking somewhere, Fee, Delphi said. We need to go now, Fee. The two nodded and immediately got up from their seats and ran out the door, with Delphi right behind them. Hikaru was slightly stunned at the sudden alarm and by her friends booking it out of the house. What the... Hikaru looked down at the table and noticed that in their rush to leave, they had forgotten the two other heart shells on the table. Hikaru's eyes went slightly wide, and she hastily picked them up before shoving them in her pocket. Shio! Kona! Wait up! Hikaru shouted and also ran out the door. The two had already made it a considerable distance away from Shio's house in search of whatever the problem was. If it was another siren attack, they needed to find them and defeat them as quickly as they could. Crap, where is this thing? Kona asked between heavy breaths. I don't know. All we can do is keep Shio started. Over there, Fee! Delphi interrupted. They all stopped so Delphi could point out what seemed to be a dome made out of some sort of dark energy off in the distance. There also seemed to be a cloud of what could either be smoke or very thick dust. That looks like it's coming from the public beach, Shio pointed out. Then that's where we're headed. Come on! They took off again. As they got closer, they encountered more and more people who were screaming and running away from the beach. Now they were sure they were heading in the right place. They ran down onto the beach and didn't see a Kiraimezu, but instead one of the sirens alone. She was floating up in the air and shooting what looked like dark yellow, brown, or near black sludge at people who were trying to run away while laughing. Kona and Shio came to a stop on the beach and looked up at her. Similar to Locke and Seish, this siren had a pair of legs rather than a tail. Her body was covered in the same black scales and had the same worn-out gold cuffs on her wrists and neck. Her eyes were blood red and her light brown hair was slightly curled and poofy at the bottom. "Who's this?" Shio asked. "I don't know. She must be another new one," Kona responded. "I think this might be Uzfi," Delphi said. "Hey!" Uz turned around and saw Kona, Shio, and Delphi glaring up at her. This only caused her to smirk and laugh. "Ha ha! You two must be those annoying Precure I've heard so much about," she said in a teasing tone. "What a pleasure to meet you." Uz floated down and landed on the ground. She took a few steps towards the girls and then stopped, placing her hands on her hips. "But unfortunately for you, I'm not going to be as easy to defeat as the others." Uz looked around at the few remaining people who were still trying to run away from the beach. She spotted one man who was running, but tripped and fell flat on his chest. A dark grin settled on Uz's face. "By my power, I demand! Give me your anxiety on my command!" Uz chanted in a sickly, cheerful tone. She thrusted her hand out in front of herself and encased the man in what looked like a bubble of jelly. He screamed loudly, but the jelly morphed to encase his body completely and muffle his screams. The jelly grew white briefly, and then just as quickly stopped. The white light left the jelly and collected itself into an orb that flew over to Uz. She quietly chuckled. Perfect. Uz then turned her attention towards an abandoned umbrella that was still stuck in the sand. She grinned and threw the energy orb towards it. "It's playtime! Kiraimezu!" The orb entered the umbrella and caused it to warp and transform into yet another gigantic monster that took the vague shape of the object. "Kiraimezu!" it growled deeply. Kona and Shio looked at each other and nodded. Kona tossed her satchel on the ground after she and Shio pulled out their heart shells. "Transform now, Fee!" Delphi shouted. "Let's dive in! Precure, Marine Splash!" The compacts opened and they inserted their sea charms. They then took their fingers and spun around the pearls inside, starting the transformation with a torrent of water. Hikata finally caught up with her friends on the beach. She grabbed onto a hand railing at the top of a short staircase that led to the sand and bent over to catch her breath. "Shio, Kona..." She looked up and saw the Kiraimezu, but also the bright pink and blue lights emanated by the power of her friends transforming. "The shining orb of the sea! Cure Pearl! The shining current of the sea! Cure Tide!" The two stood side by side and looked up at the monster in front of them. "This one could be easier than the last one. It doesn't have arms," Pearl said. "Maybe so, but don't let your guard down," Tide responded. "Plan of attack? Take it out as fast as possible by having me restrain it and you purify it? Simple, but I like it. Then let's go!" The two jumped up high in the air. As they began to excel back downwards, they extended their legs so they could kick the Kiraimezu. However, it obviously noticed this, and in a move to defend itself, it opened up the umbrella part of its body, which made its body surface area a larger. Pearl and Tide's eyes went wide as they landed on the soft part, which absorbed their kicks and flung them backwards. "Ah!" they cried out. Both girls landed on their backs with a somewhat audible thud. They both groaned in pain and then slowly began to get back up while the Kiraimezu relaxed and closed its umbrella. "That's not what I was expecting," Tide muttered. "Me neither. Should we just move to restraining it?" Pearl asked. Tide nodded. She then darted off to the side to try and draw the Kiraimezu's attention away from Pearl so she would have a chance to use her attack. This endeavor was successful and it turned to Tide. Pearl saw the opportunity and touched her heart shell. "Precure, Gleaming Pearl!" Before Pearl could finish her attack, the Kiraimezu noticed what she was doing and once again opened its umbrella. This time, however, spikes emerged from the supports underneath the umbrella, and the entire thing began to spin rapidly around the rest of the Kiraimezu's body. This was also accompanied by large amounts of dark sludge shooting out from the spikes and onto the ground. Pearl's eyes went wide. "What the—" Before she could finish, one of the shots of sludge hit her and sent her back to the ground. This time, however, she wasn't able to get up nor move because she had found herself almost entirely cased in the sludge. The umbrella closed, and the monster looked down to seemingly observe its work. "Kiraimitsu," it grumbled. "Pearlfie!" Delphi called out. Tide landed on the other side of the Kiraimitsu with wide eyes. There was no way that she could have predicted that sort of attack, and now it was up to her alone to defeat the monster. And yet, it seemed the Kiraimitsu was one step ahead of her. Tide jumped up into the air so she was above the Kiraimitsu and touched her heart shell to ready her attack. However, the Kiraimitsu noticed her maneuver and opened up the umbrella again. This time, though, it seemed to invert, and now while it spun, the shots of sludge were being shot upwards in Tide's direction. What? A shot of the sludge hit Tide, encased her body, and caused her to plummet to the ground close to where Pearl still lay. "Tide feet!" Shit, she muttered. I can't move. Look at that! The almighty Precure are so easily defeated, Ooze jeered. It looks like I was right. Locke and Seish were just too weak to deal with you. Ooze grinned and moved to stand on the Kiraimitsu's head. Come on, Kiraimitsu, let's keep moving. Shio! Kona! Hikaru shouted as she began to run down onto the beach. Pearl and Tide looked up at Hikaru with wide eyes. Hikaru, what are you doing here? Tide asked. You need to run away. You need to escape. But you guys forgot. What do we have here? Hikaru looked up and saw Ooze standing on top of the head of the Kiraimitsu that had stepped in front of her to block her path. The siren grinned at her. Who might you be? Ooze asked. What does it matter to you? Hikaru shouted. What have you done to my friends? Your friends? Oh, I get it now. You must be that human Seish mentioned. You must be the interfering nuisance. Huh? Ooze jumped down and landed on the ground once again. Sorry, kid, but I'm not gonna let you interfere with my plans. I don't have enough time for it. Ooze put her hand out and shoved Hikaru to the ground with a sickly happy, yet evil grin on her face. Hikaru groaned and looked up at the siren. What do you guys want? Why did you have to attack my dad and I's food stall and threaten our livelihood? Why do you have to hurt innocent people who have nothing to do with you? Hikaru asked desperately. Why? Well, because we can. Huh? We have great power. Power greater than anything you could even imagine. We follow our king in pursuit of even greater power, Ooze explained. We took the power of that pathetic kingdom, and now we're tasked with ruining your world and taking the confidence power from every single human and mermaid on this planet. Anxiety power will reign. How cruel. Maybe it is, but in the end, we get great power that puts us above everyone else, Ooze continued. And if you were to join us instead of helping those girls over there, then maybe you could have great and amazing power yourself. Hikaru grit her teeth. I refuse! I'm not going to willingly harm people who have nothing to do with me or with you. How annoying, Ooze muttered. Hikaru's eyes widened slightly. Who wouldn't want great, amazing power? I thought you humans were all selfish and wanted shit like that. I mean, good God, you all idolize dumb, fictional superheroes that can't do anything to help you. God, you're a weird one, aren't you? You and your friends. Hikaru looked down at the ground and clenched her fists. She hated those words. She hated being called annoying or weird. She hated it. Children ran around the playground without a care in the world. They laughed and giggled while they played hopscotch or tag with their friends. Hikaru hung out in a back corner of the playground where there was a single, recently planted tree. She was crouched down and poking around the dirt with a stick. What are you doing? A young boy asked as he walked up behind her. I'm looking for bugs, Hikaru cheered. Why would you want to do that? I want to make more friends. Friends with bugs? That's super dumb. Huh? You're weird, Kishi-chan. Hikaru skipped happily into the classroom. Now a middle schooler, she was excited to make her mark in a new environment and make brand new friends. Hey, can I sit with you guys? Hikaru asked as she approached a group of girls. They all observed her with raised eyebrows and what looked like confusion. Aren't you a girl? One of them asked. Yeah, Hikaru confirmed. Then why are you wearing that? Hikaru looked down at herself. All she was wearing was a short-sleeved shirt with yellow and white stripes underneath a pair of overalls that went down to her knees. Sure, the overalls were sort of worn out, but these were her favorite pair and she loved them. What she was wearing wasn't all that out of the ordinary. "Because I like this outfit. It's my favorite," Hikaru responded cheerfully. "But girls shouldn't wear pants." "Huh?" "Girls should wear skirts. Pants are for boys." "No, they're not. My dad says boys and girls can wear whatever they want to wear." "But you look dumb." "Yeah, you look dumb," a second girl in the group agreed. "We don't want you sitting with us," a third said. Hikaru's face fell and she looked at the ground. "You're weird, Kishi-san," the first girl said. Hikaru turned around and walked off as tears threatened to fall from her eyes. "Hey, Hikaru, have you seen that new video by Coral Rush?" Hikaru leaned over to look at her friend's phone. This friend was watching a video showcasing the newest music video from their favorite idol group. Both had been huge fans for the last 2 years, and they looked forward to every new song release. "I did! I can't believe how good they've gotten!" "Oh, who's your favorite? Mine's Yuko." "Yuko, huh?" "Yeah, I think she has the best voice, and she dances the best out of them all." "Well, my favorite is Maya." Hikaru looked at the idol in the video who was wearing the pink outfit. Her eyes softened and her cheeks became dusted in a light pink. "I think she's really good at singing and dancing, but I think she's really pretty too." You're right there. She definitely is beautiful." "I really like the color of her hair and how it makes her stand out. I like how she always has perfect makeup. I like her nails. I like her outfits. I like her confidence. I like everything about her," Hikaru explained. "She's what I aspire to be. I want to be confident and beautiful like her." "Man, you talk about her like you have a crush on her or something," her friend responded. A crush?" "Yeah, you're a girl, Hikaru. You shouldn't be having crushes on other girls. That's weird." The friend got up and walked away, leaving Hikaru alone and confused about what she'd just said. Hikaru felt her throat tighten and tears well up in the corners of her eyes. So many times she had encountered people in her life who called her weird, simply because she didn't conform to society's definitions of what was normal. She didn't understand. What was the harm in dressing differently or being interested in different things? She wasn't hurting anyone, so why did people care so much? "Aw, did I strike a chord?" Uzu's taunting tone broke Hikaru out of her thoughts. She didn't move, however, and continued to stare at the ground. "What, cat got your tongue?" "Pathetic." "Leave her alone!" Uz looked behind her at Tide, the one who had shouted. "Excuse me?" she asked. "Don't you dare make fun of Hikaru," Tide continued. "Hikaru is a wonderful person, and I'm glad to have her as my friend. I don't think my life would have ever been the same if I hadn't met her." Hikaru looked up again. "Shio," she muttered. "Hikaru isn't weird. She's perfectly normal and just fine the way she is. Just because she doesn't want to follow you and do your dirty work doesn't mean that she's weird." Uz grit her teeth. "I don't need you running your mouth at me. Why don't you shut up? Tide is right." Pearl had shouted in agreement with Tide and was thrashing around to try and escape the sludge encasing her body. "I don't know her very well, but I think Hikaru is a very nice person. She isn't weird. She's just Hikaru." Hikaru felt a pang in her heart, but it was a good pang. "Kona, Shio, just because people don't fit into your pre-established guidelines for what is or is not normal, that doesn't mean that they are weird," Pearl continued. "Where I come from, anyone willing to explore outside of the confines of the city is seen as weird, but I completely disagree with sentiment because why does it matter? Hikaru being brave enough to want to help us fight you, even when she doesn't have any powers, proves to me that she isn't the weird one. You are!" Uzu's eyes went wide for a brief moment before they narrowed into a dark glare. Hikaru gulped and she decided to try and slowly begin getting up so she wouldn't alert Uz nor the Kirai Mizu. "I hope you know, Cure Pearl," Uz spat. "I don't take too kindly to insults." Hikaru's leg shook slightly beneath her weight. She had faced one of these monsters just a few days ago with no problem, and she knew she could do it again. But she also knew this one was stronger, more erratic, and the others were unable to help her. She was scared. But she had to do something. She had to help her friends. So what? You dish them out, yet you can't take them yourself? Oh, I can take them just fine, thank you. Just not from the likes of you, Ooze said and held out her arm. Get them, Kiraimezu. Finish them off and steal the medallion. Kiraimezu, stop! The Kiraimezu did just that and turned to face Hikaru with a distasteful grunt. Ooze grit her teeth and snarled. Found your voice again, huh? Do I need to say it again, human? You're weird, annoying, pathetic. You can't do anything on your own, Ooze snarled. You're wrong, Hikaru shouted. What? I may not align myself with what others expect from me, and I may not always do what they deem to be correct or better for me, but that doesn't make me any less of a person, she continued. I am not going to take your power. You can keep it. Your power is sourced from the pain of innocent people, and I want no part in that. And what? You think you can get greater powers from the Pretty Cure? You think that they are any better? I don't expect to get powers from them. I don't need any special powers. But I know you want them. All of you silly humans do. You all wish for something better, for something more. Stop being stubborn and join us. I will not. I want to help my friends, and I want to help them on their mission. I want to prevent you from hurting anyone else. Fuck your power and fuck your mission. I want no part in it. Grr, you weirdo. You annoying insignificant rat. You don't belong here nor anywhere, so why don't you just leave? Ooze shouted and began to conjure up an orb of energy in her hands. I guess you don't understand, Hikaru simply responded. When I have friends here to back me up, who believe in me and treat me like an equal person, those insults won't affect me. Hikaru moved to stand in a defensive position. Maybe I still have work to do on accepting myself and my goals, but I know that right now, what I want to do is to help my friends and protect the people I love. So why don't you come at me? Give me all that you've got! Ooze thrusted her hands forwards, and from the orb of energy, she shot out the same sludge the Kiraimezu had towards Hikaru. Pearl, Tide, and Delphi's eyes all went wide. Hikaru, look out! Tide shouted almost desperately. However, she needn't have worried. Just as the sludge was about to hit Hikaru, it was stopped by a bright yellow light shining from the center of her chest. The bright light spread across the whole beach, blinding Ooze and causing the Kiraimezu to groan and whine as well. Gah! What is this light? Ooze shouted. The power of the light reached Tide and Pearl and also caused the sludge encasing them to dissipate. Both of them stood up and looked at Hikaru with wide eyes. Hikaru! Pearl cheered. Whoa, what is this? What's happening? Hikaru asked. The intensity of the light died down and collected itself into a small orb. This orb floated down into Hikaru's hand and transformed into her very own sea charm. This is... One of the heart shells still in Hikaru's pocket floated up and out of it and into Hikaru's other hand. A heart shell? You're the third Pretty Cure Fee! Delphi shouted. Hurry up and transform, Fee! Hikaru looked at the objects and then up at Pearl and Tide. Both gave her reassuring smiles and nods. Tide specifically also mouthed the words, You've got this. Hikaru nodded in response and looked at Ooze. Just you watch, Siren. Your power will seem like nothing when I'm done with you. Hikaru held out the heart shell. Let's dive in! Pretty Cure, Marine, splash! The compact opened and Hikaru inserted the sea charm. She then took her finger and spun around the pearl inside, starting the transformation with a torrent of water. She did it, Tide! Pearl cheered. She did. I'm so proud of her. The shining star of the sea! Cure Reef! Like Kona and Shio before her, Hikaru stood in a brand new outfit. Unlike her friends, her top didn't cover her entire torso and instead cut off right below her chest to expose her midriff. Her top was orange, with a sort of green oval shape in the center. At the base of the top was some wavy green fabric, and on her upper arms were cuffs of transparent yellow fabric with pearls to hold them on. Around her waist was a belt of pearls, and on the sides above her hips were 2 pieces of orange fabric instead of a skirt like Pearl and Tide had. The scales that now covered her legs started out as a yellow-orange that gradiated to a yellow-green. Her hair followed the same pattern, yellow to green, and was tied up into a high side ponytail by a piece of coral. She also had transparent fabric adorning the outfit on her arms, legs, and waist. Oh my, Damn, I didn't think I would look so good, Hikaru joked happily and struck a pose. Tide's mouth dropped open before she immediately rolled her eyes and shook her head. Ah, Hikaru. No, no, no! There weren't supposed to be any more of you! Everyone turned their attention back to Ooze, who was visibly irate with the circumstances. Her fists were tightly clenched, her shoulders hunched, and her face nearly shrouded in darkness. Kiraimizu, destroy them, Ooze mumbled. Now! Kiraimizu! The Kiraimizu opened its umbrella once again. This time, instead of spinning around, it began to shoot shots of sludge from one spike that was facing towards Reef directly. Reef didn't let the attack face her and jumped out of the way. The Kiraimizu grumbled angrily and kept trying to shoot her with sludge, but was unsuccessful. Reef kept jumping, flipping, and somersaulting to dodge the shots. Man, this is fun! I could do this all day! Reef cheered as she jumped once again. We need to help her, Tide said to Pearl. I've got an idea with a slight change of plans. I'm going to leave the restraining to you, all right? Pearl suggested. Tide nodded. You got it. They ran off in separate directions around the Kiraimizu. Pearl noticed it was focused on Reef and saw her opportunity to jump in and help. She slid under the legs of the monster and stood up in front of Reef once she had landed another one of her flips. Ice shield! A light pink dome of ice materialized around the two as the Kiraimizu began to shoot a continuous stream of sludge. Pearl! Reef said. Didn't know you'd become a Precure as well, Pearl responded. Well, neither did I, Reef laughed nervously. You totally deserve it. Thanks for standing up for us and backing us up. No problem. That's what I'm here for, Reef said with a smile. Although, what do we do about this monster? I can't keep dodging its attacks forever. Don't worry about that. We've got it covered, Pearl briefly explained. We just need to wait for Tide to work her magic. Huh? Reef looked up just as Tide jumped into the air behind the Kiraimizu. Precure! Stinging Tide Tsunami! The orb of water created by Tide's attack surrounded it, then encased the entirety of the Kiraimizu's body. Tide landed on the ground, then made a hand motion that constricted the water and caused the umbrella to again close. The monster gave a deep, guttural, distasteful growl. Kiraimizu! What? Ooze shouted. Reef, now's your chance! Tide shouted. My chance? But what do I do? Reef asked. Just touch that gem on your heart shell. That'll activate your attack, Pearl said. Pearl looked at Reef and gave her a reassuring nod. Reef looked up at the monster. Okay. Reef jumped out of Pearl's dome and into the air. She touched the gem on her heart shell and it began to glow a soft yellow color. A long stream of light emerged from the shell and then circled around in the air before condensing and forming into the shape of a mirror. Reef reached up and grabbed it. Precure! Shining Reef Ray! Reef pointed the mirror towards the Kiraimizu. A bright yellow beam of light was created and it shot towards the monster, hitting it directly and engulfing its body. Mizu demasu. The Kiraimizu disappeared into a mini explosion of bubbles. Two small orbs of light appeared where it once stood, and both flew off in different directions. One flew over to the man Ooze had attacked, and the other to the spot in the sand where the umbrella had originally stood. It landed on the ground, and in a burst of light, it returned to how it had been before, looking as if it had been completely untouched. The orb that flew to the man entered his body. He groaned and began to stir from his unconscious state. Ooze clenched her fists and grit her teeth. She turned around so her back was facing the Cures. Fucking hell, she muttered. And with that, Ooze was gone. Tide ran over to Pearl and Reef with some form of worry still present on her face. Reef, are you okay? Are you hurt? Of course I'm fine, Reef reassured with a warm smile. Thanks to you two. Tide blushed and breathed a sigh of relief. Thank goodness. You girls did a great job today, Fee, Delphi said as she flew over. I'm very impressed by your teamwork, Fee. Thank you, Delphi, Pearl responded. And you, Fee, Delphi said, turning to face Reef. I wasn't expecting you to transform, but, well, welcome to the team, Fee. Thank you, Delphi. Oh, and I think you may want this back. Reef pulled out the one remaining heart shell and handed it to Delphi. Delphi's eyes went slightly wide. When you, Shio, and Kona left the house, you left behind the heart shells. I guess one of them is mine now, but the other one belongs with you, Rafe explained briefly. Is that why you showed up? Tide asked. Yeah, I followed because I knew you didn't want to leave these behind. Guess I showed up at the right time. All four giggled. But I guess since there's only one remaining heart shell, Pearl started. There's only one more precure we need to find, Tide finished. So we've got one more teammate out there, huh? Reef asked. Wonder who it could be. Back on top of the cliff, Takumi was leisurely strolling down the sidewalk. He really loved taking walks later in the day where he could just gaze out upon the open ocean. Its depth, its color, its vastness, it was just so beautiful, and it was a highlight of this particular route. Takumi stopped and leaned up against a nearby railing. He gazed out at the ocean and smiled gently. I wonder what the next few days will bring.